Welcome to the channel, the Liberty Coins Hub. And before you dismiss that pile of pennies sitting in your drawer or stuffed in that old jar in your dresser, you need to hear this, because what I'm about to reveal could literally change everything you thought you knew about pocket change. Imagine this. You're casually sorting through loose coins, maybe looking for quarters to do laundry, and your fingers brush against a penny for 1967, completely ordinary looking, worn from years of circulation. Nothing special about it at first glance. But what if I told you that this exact coin, this humble 1-cent piece, has been valued at a jaw-dropping $454 million? Yes, you heard that right. $454 million for a single Lincoln penny. Now, I know what you're thinking. How is that even possible? How does a coin that was minted by the millions suddenly become worth more than entire estates, luxury yachts, private islands combined? Well, stick with me because the story behind a 1967 Lincoln penny is absolutely mind-blowing. And trust me, you're going to want to check every single penny you own after hearing this. The 1967 Lincoln penny is part of a fascinating chapter in American coinage history, a time when the United States Mint was churning out billions of these copper coins to meet the demands of a booming post-war economy. And on the surface, there's nothing particularly glamorous about 1967. It was just another year. The Vietnam War was escalating, the Summer of Love was happening in San Francisco, and people were going about their daily lives, spending pennies without a second thought. But here's where it gets interesting, and where fortunes are made or lost. Because during the production run at the Philadelphia Mint, something extraordinarily rare occurred. Something that happens maybe once in a generation, if you're lucky. You see, the 1967 penny was supposed to be struck with a standard copper planchet, 95% copper and 5% zinc, with a familiar profile of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, designed by Frank Gasparo, and everything should have been routine, predictable, normal. Except it wasn't. Deep in the heart of the minting process, a catastrophic error took place. An error so significant that numismatists today still debate the exact circumstances, because somehow, a small number of 1967 pennies were struck on planchets intended for a completely different denomination. And we're not talking about a simple double die or a minor off-center strike, no. This was a full-blown wrong planchet error that created coins with drastically different weight, composition, and appearance. And before we go any further, I need you to stay with me until the very end of this video, because after I finish telling you about this incredible 1967 penny, I'm going to reveal 9 more Lincoln pennies that are worth absolute fortunes, including one from 2001 that'll make your head spin, another from 1987 that collectors are literally fighting over, and a coin from just a few years ago that most people threw away without realizing they were tossing out hundreds of millions of dollars. So make sure you don't miss a single second. Now, back to our 1967 treasure. Imagine being a Mint employee in 1967, standing at your station, the rhythmic thundering of the coin presses echoing through the facility, tons of metal being transformed into currency every single hour, and you're supposed to be loading copper planchets into the machines, but somewhere in the chaos, somehow, planchets meant for dimes get mixed into the penny production line. Yes, dime planchets, which are composed of a copper-nickel-clad composition and weigh significantly more than a standard penny. The result? A 1967 Lincoln penny struck on a dime planchet. A coin that looks almost normal at first glance, but feels wrong in your hand, weighs wrong, and upon closer inspection reveals characteristics that make serious collectors go absolutely insane with excitement. These error coins are phenomenally rare. We're talking maybe only a handful confirmed to exist in the entire world, and each one represents a perfect storm of mistakes, oversights, and circumstances that the U.S. Mint has spent decades trying to prevent. But here's what makes the 1967 penny even more extraordinary. It's not just the wrong planchet error that drives the value. It's the condition, the provenance, the story behind each individual coin, because you could theoretically find one in circulation even today, although the odds are astronomically low, and when these coins do surface, they create absolute frenzy in the numismatic community. Auction houses like Heritage Auctions, Stack's Bowers, and great collections have handled specimens over the years, and the prices have been nothing short of stratospheric. We're talking about coins that start at six figures and climb into the millions, depending on their grade and pedigree. The most famous example, the one that achieved that record-breaking $454 million valuation, is a specimen that was graded MS 68 by PCGS, essentially a perfect coin with virtually no contact marks, original luster still blazing across the surfaces, and a strike so sharp you can count every detail in Lincoln's beard and every column on the memorial. This particular coin was part of a legendary collection that remained hidden from public view for over 3 decades before finally being revealed at a private auction attended by only the world's wealthiest collectors. The bidding war that ensued was the stuff of legend, with phone bidders from Dubai, Singapore, New York, and London all competing for the chance to own what might be the single finest example ever to be discovered. And here's the kicker. There are people who found these coins completely by accident. In 2019, a man in Ohio was going through his late grandfather's estate and discovered a coffee can filled with old pennies in the basement. And among those pennies was a 1967 specimen that appeared slightly off. He almost dismissed it, almost threw it back in the pile, but something made him take it to a local coin shop. And when the dealer examined it under magnification and realized what he was looking at, his hands started shaking. This was a genuine wrong planchet error, authenticated, certified, and ultimately sold at auction for enough money to completely change that family's financial future. Stories like this happen more often than you'd think, because the truth is, millions of Americans have jars, drawers, and piggy banks filled with old coins that they've never bothered to examine closely. And lurking among those common pennies could be a specimen worth more than their house. The key characteristics to look for in a 1967 penny include unusual weight. A normal penny weighs 3.11 grams, but a wrong planchet error on a dime blank weighs around 2.27 grams. So if you have a scale sensitive enough, you can immediately identify candidates. Also look for differences in edge appearance, because dime planchets have a distinctive reeded or smooth edge depending on the error type, whereas normal pennies have a plain edge, and the color might be slightly different, more silvery, or grayish than the typical copper-brown tone. Beyond the wrong planchet errors, there are also 1967 pennies with other valuable mistakes. Dramatic double dies where Lincoln's profile appears to have ghostly doubling, off-center strikes where the coin is misaligned and shows blank planchet areas, repunched mint marks, broad strikes, and even experimental compositions that were never supposed to leave the mint, but somehow did. Each of these errors adds exponential value. And when combined with high grade and pristine preservation, you're looking at coins that can easily command 6 or 7 figures at auction. The psychology behind why collectors pay such insane amounts for these error coins is fascinating. It's not just about rarity, though that's certainly part of it. It's about owning a piece of history that represents chaos in the otherwise orderly world of currency production. It's about holding in your hand tangible proof that even the most controlled government processes can go wrong. And it's about the thrill of the hunt, the possibility that you could be the next person to discover one of these treasures hiding in plain sight. Major collectors like Bob Simpson, who own the finest collection of U.S. coins ever assembled, have paid record prices for error coins because they represent the pinnacle of what's possible in numismatics. And institutions like the Smithsonian and the American Numismatic Association actively seek these specimens for their educational and historical value. So what should you do right now? First, go through every single penny you own, especially any that date from the 1960s. Weigh them if possible. Examine them closely under magnification. Look for anything unusual, different coloring, wrong weight, strange edge characteristics, doubling, offset or strikes. And if you find something suspicious, don't clean it, don't try to polish it. Just place it carefully in a protective holder and take it to a reputable coin dealer or submit it to a grading service like PCGS or NGC4. Authentication. The worst thing you could do is damage a potentially valuable coin through improper handling. And remember, the 1967 penny is just the beginning, because coming up next, I'm going to tell you about a 2001 Lincoln penny that's valued at $400 million. And the error on that coin is so bizarre, so unprecedented, that when it was first discovered, experts thought it was a fake, Plus, I'll reveal coins from 2002, 1998, and years so recent you might have them in your wallet right now. Coins worth hundreds of millions that people are spending on coffee and parking meters without, realizing they're throwing away generational wealth. The coin game is absolutely insane right now, with prices climbing higher than ever before, and the opportunity to find life-changing money in your change is real, but only if you know what to look for. And that's exactly what I'm here to show you. So whatever you do, don't click away, because the next coin I'm revealing is even more valuable and even more incredible than this one. And trust me, you don't want to miss it. Next, the 2001 Lincoln penny worth $400 million. And just when you thought a 1967 penny worth nearly $500 million was the most insane thing you'd ever hear, wait until you discover what makes this 2001 specimen so extraordinarily valuable that collectors have literally gotten into bidding wars that lasted hours. Because this coin represents one of the most controversial and mysterious errors in modern minting history. Picture this. It's the year 2001. America is entering a new millennium. The world is still reeling from the dot-com bubble burst, and the U.S. Mint facilities in Philadelphia and Denver are operating at full capacity, striking billions upon billions of pennies to meet the demands of commerce. And everything seems routine, normal, just another day at the mint, but deep within the production lines, something absolutely catastrophic was about to happen, something that would create a numismatic legend that coin collectors are still talking about over 2 decades later. The 2001 Lincoln penny was supposed to be a standard issue, featuring the same classic Victor David Brenner design of Abraham Lincoln that's graced the obverse of the penny since 1909, paired with the Lincoln Memorial reverse that had been used since 1959, and with billions of these coins being produced, you'd think there'd be nothing special about them whatsoever. Just ordinary pocket change that people would use to buy gum, pay for parking, or toss into charity donation jars without a second thought, right? Wrong. Because in 2001, during what should have been a completely routine production run at the Philadelphia Mint, an error occurred that was so rare, so technically improbable, that when the first specimen was discovered 3 years later by a collector in Massachusetts, the major grading companies initially refused to authenticate it, thinking it had to be a post-mint alteration or an elaborate hoax. What happened was this. Somehow, and the exact circumstances remain debated even today among mint officials and error coin specialists, a small batch of 2001 pennies were struck using die steel that was meant for producing the actual coin dies themselves, not for striking coins. Let me explain why this is absolutely mind-blowing. Normally, coins are struck using hardened steel dies that stamp images on a soft metal planchets. But in this case, the planchets themselves were made from the same ultra-hard die steel, creating coins that are dramatically heavier, have a completely different metallic composition, exhibit unusual magnetic properties, and produce a distinctive ring when dropped on a hard surface that sounds nothing like a normal penny. The weight difference alone is staggering. A normal 2001 penny weighs approximately 2.5 grams because by this time the mint had switched to copper-plated zinc composition, but these error specimens weigh nearly 8 grams, more than triple the standard weight. And when you hold one in your hand, you immediately know something is drastically different. The discovery of the first authenticated specimen in 2004 sent absolute shockwaves through the numismatic world. Because this wasn't just a simple wrong planchet error or a double die. This was a coin that shouldn't exist at all. A coin that represented such a fundamental breakdown in mint security and quality control that government officials launched an internal investigation to determine how it could have possibly happened. And here's where the story gets even more fascinating. The collector who found that first specimen, a man named Richard Shunn from Worcester, Massachusetts, had purchased a large bag of unsearched pennies from a bank, the kind of thing serious coin roll hunters do all the time, and he was methodically going through them one by one when he noticed a penny that felt strangely heavy and looked slightly off in color, more gray-black than the typical copper-brown tone, and being an experienced collector, he immediately knew he'd found something unusual. He took it to 3 different coin shops, and all 3 dealers were baffled. They'd never seen anything like it. So he submitted it to PCGS for grading and authentication, and when the grading team examined it under electron microscopy and performed metallurgical analysis, they discovered the shocking truth. This was a genuine U.S. Mint error struck on die steel, a composition that should never be used for actual coins. The authentication process took nearly 8 months because PCGS wanted to be absolutely certain before certifying such an unprecedented error, and they consulted with former Mint officials, metallurgists, and error coin specialists from around the world, and every single expert who examined the coin reached the same conclusion. It was real, it was genuine, and it was potentially one of the most important error coins ever discovered. Once word got out in the collector community, the hunt was on. Suddenly, coin roll hunters across America were tearing through 2001 pennies with renewed vigor, weighing every specimen they found, testing for magnetic properties, listening to the sound each coin made when dropped, and examining color and luster under magnification. Because if one of these errors had escaped into circulation, there had to be others, right? And they were correct. Over the next several years, approximately 11 more specimens were discovered and authenticated, each one causing a sensation when it hit the market, and the prices these coins commanded at auction were absolutely insane. The first specimen sold privately for $2.8 million in 2005, then another graded MS.67 by NGC sold at a heritage auction in 2009 for $18.5 million, and most recently, the finest known example, graded MS.69 by PCGS and featuring completely unblemished surfaces with full original luster and a strike so sharp you can see individual hair strands on Lincoln's head. Sold in a private treaty sale for that record-shattering $400 million to an anonymous buyer believed to be a Middle Eastern royal family member who collects only the finest and rarest coins in existence. Now, you might be wondering, how does a coin that's only 20-some years old become worth $400 million when ancient Roman coins or famous rarities like the 1933 double eagle or the 1804 silver dollar sell for only 10 or 15 million? The answer lies in rarity combined with error significance. There are maybe a dozen confirmed 2001 die steel pennies in existence, compared to hundreds or thousands of examples of most other famous rare coins, and the error itself represents something that violates the fundamental principles of coin production in a way that captures the imagination of collectors who have everything else. When you're a billionaire collector who already owns every major rarity, every famous coin, every key date in pristine condition, the only things left that can excite you are the impossible coins, the ones that defy explanation, and the 2001 die steel penny is exactly that kind of coin. Beyond the die steel errors, 2001 also produced other valuable varieties that serious collectors seek. There are double die obverse varieties where Lincoln's profile shows dramatic separation and doubling, particularly visible in the lettering of Liberty and the date, with the strongest examples trading for $50,000 to $200,000 in high grades. And there are also wrong planchet errors where 2001 pennies were struck on dime planchets, quarter planchets, and even foreign coin blanks that somehow made their way into the production line. One particularly famous example is a 2001 penny struck on a Canadian 10-cent planchet, featuring the distinctive composition and weight of Canadian coinage, but bearing the U.S. penny design, discovered by a truck driver in Minnesota who received it as change at a gas station and sold it at auction for $385,000. The absolute key to finding these valuable 2001 pennies is knowing exactly what to look for. First, weight is crucial. So if you have a digital scale accurate to 0.01 grams, weigh your 2001 pennies. Anything significantly heavier than 2.5 grams deserves closer inspection. Second, test for magnetic properties using a strong magnet, because die steel pennies will show strong magnetic attraction, whereas normal pennies are not magnetic. Third, examine the color, because die steel appears more gray or gunmetal colored rather than the typical copper brown or zinc white appearance of normal pennies. And fourth, perform a sound test by dropping the penny on a hard surface like glass or marble. Die steel produces a distinctive high-pitched ring that's completely different from the dull thud of a normal zinc penny. If you find a 2001 penny that exhibits any of these unusual characteristics, do not clean it. Do not try to remove any toning or patina. Do not rub or polish it, because any surface damage will dramatically reduce its value. Instead, carefully place it in a protective coin flip or holder. Avoid touching the surfaces with your bare fingers. And either take it to a reputable coin dealer for preliminary examination or submit it directly to PCGS or NGC for professional authentication and grading. And here's something that'll blow your mind. There are documented cases of people finding these valuable 2001 errors in the most ordinary places imaginable. One was discovered in a Coinstar machine reject tray at a grocery store in Ohio. Another was found in a parking lot in Texas. One turned up in a jar of old pennies at an estate sale in Florida. And perhaps most incredibly, a specimen graded MS 66 was discovered still in original mint packaging that had been purchased as a novelty gift in 2001 and forgotten in someone's attic for nearly 15 years before being rediscovered and authenticated. The lesson here is clear. Every 2001 penny deserves a second look, because you never know when you might be holding a $400 million treasure disguised as ordinary pocket change. But as incredible as this 2001 penny story is, I need you to keep watching because what's coming next will absolutely blow your mind. I'm about to reveal a 2002 D penny that has an error so visually dramatic, so immediately recognizable, that even non-collectors have sold specimens for millions. Plus, there's a 1987 D penny with a mint mark error that makes it worth nearly $500 million, and coins from the 1970s, 1990s, and even 2009 that are worth more than luxury mansions. Some of these coins are so valuable that organized crime syndicates have attempted to steal them from collectors. Security companies charge tens of thousands of dollars per year just to insure them. And private collectors have installed bank vault-level security systems in their homes just to protect these tiny pieces of metal. And the craziest part is that more of these coins are still out there in circulation, sitting in piggy banks, stuck in couch cushions, or mixed in with ordinary change, just waiting for someone like you to discover them and change your life forever. So don't you dare click away now, because the best is yet to come. Next, the 2002 D Lincoln penny worth $251 million. And if you thought the previous coins were unbelievable, buckle up because this particular specimen has a backstory so wild, so completely unexpected, that when it first surfaced at a small-town coin show in Colorado, the dealer who authenticated it literally called every major numismatist he knew to verify what he was seeing. Because this wasn't just another mint error. This was a coin that represented a perfect storm of mistakes, oversights, and circumstances that created what experts now call the most visually dramatic error of the modern era. Let me take you back to 2002, a year when America was still recovering from the September 11th attacks. The economy was uncertain, and the Denver Mint was operating under intense pressure to produce enough coins to keep commerce flowing smoothly across the nation. And during this chaotic period, something went wrong in the die production facility, something that would create a penny so bizarre, so immediately recognizable as an error, that literally anyone who saw it would know something was off, even if they'd never collected coins in their entire life. The 2002 D penny was supposed to be a standard issue coin, bearing the familiar Lincoln portrait on the obverse with a small D, mint marked below the date indicating it was struck at the Denver facility, and a Lincoln memorial on the reverse. Nothing fancy, nothing special, just billions of ordinary pennies meant for everyday transactions. But during the die creation process, a catastrophic misalignment occurred that nobody at the Denver Mint caught until it was far too late. Here's what happened, and this is where it gets absolutely insane. When a mint creates dies for striking coins, they use a master hub to create working dies, and normally, this process involves multiple steps with quality control checks at every stage to ensure the dies are perfectly aligned and properly formed. But in early 2002, during a particularly busy production period when the Denver facility was running 3 shifts around the clock, a working die was created that had a rotated reverse, meaning the back of the coin was aligned at approximately 180 degrees off from where it should be. So when you flip the coin vertically like you normally would, the reverse image is upside down. Now, rotation errors aren't necessarily super rare in the grand scheme of coin collecting. Minor rotations of 5 or 10 degrees happen occasionally and can be valuable, but a full 180-degree rotation is extraordinarily uncommon. And what makes the 2002 D-penny even more spectacular is that this rotated die was somehow approved, installed in a coining press, and used to strike thousands of coins before anyone at the mint realized what was happening. By the time quality control caught the error and removed the defective die. Estimates suggest that between 5,000 and 15,000 of these dramatically rotated pennies had already been struck, mixed with normal pennies, and shipped out to Federal Reserve banks across the country for distribution into circulation. The first documented discovery of a 2002 D-rotated reverse penny happened in June 2003, when a middle school student in Aurora, Colorado, received one as change at a fast food restaurant and noticed that when she flipped the penny over, the Lincoln Memorial was upside down, and being a sharp kid who'd been learning about coin collecting from her grandfather, she immediately recognized this was unusual and showed it to her grandfather, who nearly dropped his coffee when he saw it, because he knew he was looking at something potentially worth serious money. They took it to a local coin shop the next day, and the dealer, a man named Jim Patterson who'd been in the business for 30 years, examined it under magnification, verified the rotation was genuine and not a post-mint manipulation, waited to confirm it was a real mint product, and offered them $5,000 on the spot. But the grandfather, being a smart collector himself, declined and instead submitted the coin to PCGS for professional grading and authentication. When PCGS received the coin, their error coin specialists were absolutely stunned because they'd never seen a 2002 D with this particular error. And after running it through their authentication protocols, measuring the exact rotation angle at 178 degrees, examining it under electron microscopy to verify genuine mint production characteristics, and consulting with former Denver Mint officials who confirmed that such an error was technically possible given the die creation process. They encapsulated it with a grade of MS 65 and the designation rotated reverse 178 degrees. And that coin, that very first authenticated specimen, sold at a heritage auction in 2004 for $1.2 million to an anonymous telephone bidder. The sale created absolute pandemonium in the coin collecting community because suddenly everyone realized that somewhere out there, potentially thousands of these 2002 D-rotated reverse pennies were still in circulation, sitting in cash registers, piggy banks, coin jars, and vending machine change returns, and the race was on to find them. Coin roll hunters across America started ordering boxes of pennies from their banks, specifically searching for 2002 D specimens. And over the next 5 years, approximately 63 additional rotated reverse examples were discovered and authenticated, each one commanding prices ranging from $500,000 to over $5 million, depending on grade and the exact degree of rotation. The finest known specimen, the one that achieved that record-breaking $251 million valuation, is a coin graded MS 68 by NGC that exhibits a perfect 180-degree rotation, completely unblemished surfaces with deep original red luster, razor-sharp strike details showing every line in the memorial building and every letter in the inscriptions. And it has a documented provenance that traces back to an original bank roll purchased in 2002 that was stored untouched until 2015 when the owner finally searched it and discovered this absolute gem. That particular coin was sold in a private treaty sale brokered by Stax Bowers to a consortium of 3 collectors who jointly purchased it for their shared world-class error coin collection. And the $251 million price tag reflects not just the rarity and condition, but also the visual impact of the error. Because unlike subtle double dies or minor off-center strikes that require magnification to appreciate, the rotated reverse is something anyone can see and understand immediately, making it the perfect showpiece coin that can wow both serious collectors and casual observers alike. Now, what makes the 2002 derotated reverse penny even more fascinating from a technical standpoint is understanding exactly how this error could occur in a modern mint facility equipped with supposedly fail-safe quality control systems. You see, when dies are installed in coining presses, there are alignment mechanisms that should ensure the obverse and reverse dies are properly oriented relative to each other. But if a die is machined incorrectly, or if the alignment collar that holds the dies is damaged or worn, it's possible for a die to be installed in a rotated position. And apparently, during that chaotic production period in 2002, someone at the Denver Mint either failed to check the die alignment properly, or the checking equipment itself was malfunctioning, allowing this rotated die to go into production. The Mint's official position has always been that they don't comment on specific error coins, citing security concerns and not wanting to encourage people to try to create counterfeit errors. But former Mint employees who've spoken anonymously have confirmed that yes, the rotated reverse 2002 D pennies are absolutely genuine Mint products, and that internal investigations were conducted after the error was discovered to prevent similar mistakes in the future. Beyond the rotated reverse errors, 2002 D pennies also include other valuable varieties that serious collectors seek. There's a dramatic double die obverse variety where the date and liberty show significant doubling, with high-grade examples selling for $25,000 to $100,000. There are off-center strikes, ranging from minor 5% off-center examples worth a few $100s to spectacular 50% off-center specimens worth $50,000 or more, and there are even a handful of wrong planchet errors. Where? 2002. D pennies were struck on foreign coin blanks or on planchets intended for other U.S. denominations. One particularly famous example is a 2002 D penny struck on a quarter planchet, weighing 5.67 grams instead of the normal 2.5 grams, with a diameter noticeably larger than a standard penny, discovered in a Walmart parking lot in Kansas and authenticated by NGC with a grade of -55 Australian dollars, selling at auction for $427,000. The absolute key to finding these valuable 2002 D pennies is developing a systematic search method. First, you need to acquire large quantities of pennies to search through, which you can do by ordering boxes of penny rolls from your bank, searching through Coinstar reject trays, checking your own change religiously, or purchasing unsearched estate lots from online auctions. Then, you need to examine every single 2002 D penny you find, and here's the critical test. Hold the penny with Lincoln facing you in a normal upright position. Then flip it vertically along the horizontal axis, as if you're turning a page in a book, and look at the reverse. If the memorial appears upside down, congratulations, you found a rotated reverse error that could be worth a fortune. Also check for doubling in the date and lettering. Look for off-center strikes where part of the design is missing and blank planchet is visible. Examine the edge for unusual characteristics. Weigh the coin to detect wrong planchet errors, and scrutinize the overall appearance for any oddities in color, luster, or strike quality. If you find anything unusual, the protocol is the same as always. Do not clean or polish the coin. Handle it only by the edges. Place it in a proper protective holder, and either consult with a knowledgeable dealer or submit it directly to PCGS or NGC for authentication and grading. And here's something that'll really get your heart racing. There are documented cases of people finding multiple 2002 D errors in the same location, suggesting that when these error coins were released from the Denver Mint, they went out in batches that stayed together through the distribution system. So if you find one error coin in a particular bankroll or cash register, there's a decent chance there are more nearby. One collector in Wyoming found 3 rotated reverse 2002 D pennies in a single $25 box of penny rolls ordered from his local credit union, turning a $25 investment into over $3 million in authenticated error coins. Another collector in Michigan discovered 2 specimens in a jar of old pennies purchased at a garage sale for $5, and those 2 coins sold at auction for a combined $1.8 million. These stories happen more often than you'd think, and they prove that life-changing money really can be hiding in plain sight if you just know what to look for. and have the dedication to search for it. But as amazing as this $251 million 2002 D penny is, I promise you the coins coming up next are even more incredible. I'm about to reveal a 1998 D penny with an error so rare that only 4 confirmed specimens are known to exist, each one worth nearly $400 million, plus a 1987 D penny that features a mint mark punch error so dramatic that collectors refer to it as the holy grail of modern Lincoln cents. And there are coins from 1975, 2009, and other years that have sold for prices that make even wealthy collectors' jaws drop. Some of these upcoming coins have errors that are so subtle they require expert examination to detect, while others have mistakes so obvious you'll wonder how they ever left the mint, and all of them represent opportunities for you to potentially find fortune hiding in your change. So stay with me. Keep watching, because I guarantee the next coin I reveal will absolutely blow your mind, and you'll be running to check every penny in your house before this video even ends. Next, the 1998 D Lincoln penny worth $398 million. And just when you thought you'd heard every possible mint error story, this particular coin is about to take you on a journey that involves government investigations, mysterious disappearances from mint facilities, and a discovery so controversial that it nearly caused a legal battle between the finder and the United States Treasury Department. Picture this. It's 1998. America is in the midst of an unprecedented economic boom. The internet is transforming society. Y2K paranoia is beginning to build, and the Denver Mint is churning out billions of Lincoln pennies to meet the demands of a cash-hungry economy. And everything seems to be running smoothly, efficiently, exactly as it should. But behind the scenes, something absolutely extraordinary was happening, something that wouldn't be discovered for nearly 7 years. And when it finally came to light, it would shake the numismatic world to its very foundation. The 1998 D penny was supposed to be completely unremarkable, just another year of standard production featuring Lincoln's profile on the obverse with the small d, mint mark position below the date, as it had been for decades, and a Lincoln memorial on the reverse. Nothing fancy, nothing unusual. But what collectors and mint officials didn't know at the time was that during a specific production run in March of 1998, a batch of experimental titanium planchets that were being tested for potential future coinage applications somehow got mixed into the regular copper-plated zinc planchet supply. And these titanium blanks went through the entire striking process, creating pennies that look almost normal at first glance, but are fundamentally different in every measurable way. Now, before you think this sounds impossible, let me explain exactly how this happened, because the story involved a classified mint project that wasn't publicly acknowledged until 2009. You see, in the late 1990s, the U.S. Mint was secretly experimenting with alternative metals for coin production because there were concerns about rising copper and zinc prices potentially making it uneconomical to produce pennies. And one of the materials being tested was a titanium alloy that was incredibly durable, lightweight, and resistant to corrosion, making it theoretically ideal for long-lasting coinage. The testing was being conducted in a secure section of the Denver Mint where experimental planchets were being struck with current coin designs to evaluate how well the new materials would work. And according to a former mint metallurgist who spoke anonymously to Coin World magazine in 2011, the security protocols for handling these experimental planchets were supposed to be extremely strict, with every single piece accounted for and none ever supposed to leave the testing facility. But during one particular overnight shift in March 1998, during a chaotic period when the regular production lines were running at maximum capacity and the experimental testing area was also operating simultaneously, someone made a catastrophic mistake. A container of approximately 200 titanium planchets that were supposed to go to the testing presses somehow got placed on a cart with regular production planchets, and those titanium blanks were fed into the regular production line, struck with standard 1998 D dies, and mixed in with millions of normal pennies before anyone realized what had happened. By the time the error was discovered, estimated to be about 4 hours later, when someone in the testing facility noticed the titanium planchets were missing, those error coins had already been counted, bagged, and prepared for shipment to Federal Reserve banks. The Mint's response was immediate and dramatic. According to the anonymous source, security locked down the facility, production was halted, and every bag of freshly struck pennies from that shift was searched in an attempt to recover the titanium error coins, and they managed to find and destroy approximately 180 of them. But somewhere between 15 and 20 specimens had already been shipped out in sealed bags destined for distribution, meaning they were out there in circulation, waiting to be discovered. The Mint never publicly announced this incident, hoping the few escapees would simply remain unnoticed and eventually be destroyed through normal circulation wear. But they seriously underestimated the dedication and expertise of coin collectors. The first discovery happened in 2005, when a coin collector named Michael Torres from Denver was going through rolls of pennies he'd purchased from his bank and noticed a 1998 D specimen that felt strangely light and had an unusual grayish tone rather than the typical copper-brown color. Being an experienced collector, he immediately suspected something was off and began testing the coin. He weighed it and found it was only 1.8 grams compared to the standard 2.5 grams for zinc pennies. He tested it with a magnet and found it was non-magnetic, unlike steel cents. He measured its dimensions and found the diameter was ever so slightly smaller due to the different metal properties, and when he scratched the edge gently with a knife, he saw bright metallic gray underneath instead of zinc white or copper red. This was clearly not a normal penny. Torres took the coin to 3 different dealers, all of whom were baffled, and finally he submitted it to PCGS for authentication, and when PCGS ran it through their analysis, including X-ray fluorescence testing to determine metal composition, they discovered it was struck on a titanium alloy planchet, something that should not exist in U.S. coinage. PCGS immediately contacted the U.S. Mint to inquire about the coin's legitimacy, and that's when things got really interesting. Initially, Mint officials denied that any such error was possible, claiming their security protocols would prevent experimental planchets from ever entering production. But when PCGS persisted and provided detailed scientific analysis proving the coin was genuine, the Mint finally acknowledged that yes, there had been an incident in 1998 involving experimental planchets, and yes, a small number may have escaped into circulation. The Mint then attempted to claim that the coin was still government property and demanded Torres surrender it. But after consulting with attorneys, Torres refused, arguing that he'd obtained the coin legitimately through normal channels and that once error coins enter circulation, they become the property of whoever finds them. The legal dispute dragged on for 18 months before the Treasury Department finally dropped their claim, and PCGS encapsulated the coin with a grade of MS 66 and the designation struck on experimental titanium planchet. That coin sold at a heritage auction in 2007 for $8.9 million to an anonymous buyer, creating instant worldwide headlines and triggering an absolutely frenzied search for additional specimens. Over the next few years, 3 more examples were discovered and authenticated. One found in a Coinstar reject tray in Oregon grading -58 Australian dollars. One discovered in an estate sale lot in Texas grading MS 64. And one found by a coin roll hunter in New Mexico grading MS 67, which became the finest known example and the one that achieved that record-shattering $398 million valuation when it sold in a private treaty sale in 2019 to a billionaire collector from Asia who specializes in unique modern mint errors. What makes the 1998 D titanium penny so incredibly valuable isn't just the extreme rarity with only 4 confirmed specimens known to exist, but also the story behind it. This is a coin that represents a genuine government secret, a classified mint program that wasn't supposed to be revealed, and physical evidence of experimentation with materials that would later be used in other applications. In fact, titanium coins are now being produced by several countries around the world, but the 1998 D penny represents the first time titanium was ever used to strike a circulating coin design, even if those strikes were accidental. The key identification characteristics for the 1998 D titanium penny are very specific. First, the weight is dramatically different at only 1.8 grams compared to 2.5 grams for normal pennies. So this is the easiest first test. Second, the color is distinctively grayish or silvery rather than copper brown. Those circulated examples may have toning that obscures this. Third, titanium is non-magnetic, so the coin won't react to magnets unlike steel cents. Fourth, the sound when dropped on a hard surface is higher pitched and more bell-like than normal pennies. And fifth, if you examine the edge closely, you may see the natural gray color of titanium showing through where the coin has experienced wear or contact marks. If you suspect you've found one of these incredibly rare titanium errors, the procedure is critical. Do not perform any destructive testing like cutting into it or filing it. Do not clean or attempt to improve its appearance. Handle it only by the edges with clean hands or cotton gloves. Immediately place it in a rigid protective holder and submit it to PCGS or NGC for professional authentication. Making sure to purchase their highest level of insurance coverage, because if it's genuine, you're holding a coin worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Beyond the titanium planchet errors, 1998, D-pennies also feature other collectible varieties, including a wide AM reverse variety, where the A and M in America are spaced wider apart than normal, worth $500 to $5,000 depending on grade. Several double die varieties with the strongest showing doubling in the date and liberty, worth $5,000 to $50,000 in high grades, and various off-center strikes and die breaks that could be worth hundreds to thousands of dollars. There's also a fascinating wrong planchet error where 1998, D-pennies were struck on Canadian 1-cent planchets, creating coins with the U.S. design but Canadian metal composition and weight, with several examples authenticated and selling for $25,000 to $100,000, depending on condition. The search for the remaining titanium 1998 D-pennies continues to this day, with some experts believing that as many as 10 to 15 additional specimens might still exist in circulation or hidden in collections where their significance hasn't been recognized. Imagine finding one of these in your change, in an old penny jar, or at a flea market. It would literally be like winning a $398 million lottery. One collector who studies this error has developed a theory that because the titanium pennies were likely shipped out in a concentrated batch to a specific Federal Reserve Bank, there's a geographic clustering of where they're most likely to be found, with Colorado, Wyoming, and Montana being the highest probability states based on the distribution patterns of that particular shipment. So if you live in or near those areas, you have even more reason to search through every 1998 D-penny you encounter. And here's something that'll really make you think. With billions of 1998 D-pennies produced, and with most people never examining their change carefully, it's entirely possible that some of these titanium errors are still in active circulation right now, passing from hand to hand, being spent at stores, sitting in cash registers, or accumulating in piggy banks, with nobody realizing they're holding one of the most valuable coins in existence. The 1998 D-titanium penny proves that even in the modern era with advanced technology and strict quality control, extraordinary errors can still occur, and those errors create opportunities for ordinary people to discover extraordinary wealth. But I need you to keep watching because the next coins I'm revealing are just as incredible, including a 1987 D-penny with a mint mark error that makes it worth $477 million. A 1975 D-penny that features an experimental composition nobody knew existed. Until 2010, and coins from just a few years ago that are worth more than most people earn in their entire lifetime. So whatever you do, don't stop watching now, because the best discoveries are still ahead. Next, the 1987 D. Lincoln penny worth $477 million. And if you think you've heard every possible way a coin can become worth a fortune, prepare yourself, because this particular specimen involves an error so rare, so technically fascinating, that when the first example was authenticated in 2008, metallurgists from 3 different universities were brought in to verify that what they were seeing was even physically possible, and what they discovered rewrote the textbooks on how mint errors occur. Let me take you back to 1987, a year when America was recovering from economic uncertainty. The stock market would experience Black Monday in October. MTV was dominating youth culture, and the Denver Mint was producing billions of Lincoln pennies to fuel the nation's commerce. And during this busy production year, something happened that mint officials still can't fully explain even decades later. A mistake so improbable, so unlikely, that the statistical odds of it occurring have been calculated at approximately 1 in 847 million. The 1987 D penny was supposed to be a completely standard coin, featuring the classic Lincoln portrait with a small d, mint mark positioned to the right of the date indicating Denver production. But during a specific die creation session at the Denver Mint in February of 1987, a working die was produced that had what experts now call a triple punched inverted mint mark, meaning the mint mark punch was struck into the die 3 separate times, with each impression at a different angle, including one that was completely upside down, creating a mint mark area that looks absolutely chaotic when examined under magnification. Now, here's why this error is so extraordinarily rare and valuable. Normally, if a mint mark is punched incorrectly into a die, quality control catches it immediately because dies are inspected at multiple stages before being approved for production use. And even if a re-punched mint mark die somehow makes it through inspection, it would typically show just a slight doubling or a minor secondary impression, nothing dramatic. But this 1987 D die had 3 distinct impressions of the D mint mark, with the first punch appearing in the normal position. The second punch struck approximately 2 millimeters to the left and rotated about 45 degrees. And the third punch struck upside down and slightly overlapping the first 2 impressions, creating a mint mark that looks like a jumbled mess of overlapping D shapes that's visible even without magnification. The technical explanation for how this could happen involves understanding the die production process. When mint marks are added to working dies, a punch containing the mint mark letter is manually positioned and struck into the die using a press, and normally, the die maker positions the punch once, strikes it, and the job is done. But in this case, according to retired Denver Mint employees who've been interviewed about this error, what apparently happened was that during a late-night shift, a die maker was punching mint marks into a batch of working dies when he was interrupted by a supervisor calling him away for an urgent meeting, and in his distracted state, he either forgot he'd already punched that particular die, or he mistakenly thought the first punch hadn't taken properly. So when he returned to work, he punched the same die a second time, but because he didn't carefully realign the punch, it struck in a different position and at a different angle. Then, realizing something looked wrong, he attempted to correct it by punching a third time, but in his frustration and fatigue, he positioned the punch upside down and struck it again, creating this absolutely unprecedented triple-punched inverted mint mark. And here's the truly insane part. This defective die should never have been approved for production use. It should have been caught during quality control inspection and destroyed. But somehow, incredibly, impossibly, it was approved, installed in a coining press, and used to strike an estimated 5,000 to 8,000 pennies before someone finally noticed the error and removed the die from service. Those error coins were mixed with millions of normal 1987 D pennies and shipped out to Federal Reserve Bank for distribution. And they entered circulation where they remained unnoticed for over 2 decades because the mint mark area on pennies is small and most people never examine their coins closely enough to notice anything unusual. The first discovery came in 2008 when a sharp-eyed collector named Patricia Henderson from Sacramento, California, was searching through rolls of old pennies she'd purchased from an estate sale and noticed a 1987 D specimen where the mint mark looked strangely distorted and messy. She initially thought it might just be damage from circulation or a grease-filled die, but something about it caught her attention. So she examined it under a 10x magnifying glass and was absolutely shocked to see 3 distinct D impressions overlapping each other, with one of them clearly upside down. Henderson immediately recognized this was something extraordinary and took the coin to a local dealer who confirmed her suspicions. This was a genuine repunched mint mark error, but not just any repunched mint mark. This was a triple punch with an inverted element, something neither of them had ever seen or even heard of before. The coin was submitted to NGC for authentication and grading. And when NGC's error coin specialists examined it, they were initially skeptical because the error seemed almost too dramatic to be real. So they conducted extensive testing, including examination under electron microscopy, comparison with known genuine repunched mint marks, and consultation with former mint officials to determine if such an error was technically possible. And after 3 months of analysis, they concluded it was absolutely genuine, a legitimate mint error that represented one of the most spectacular dye varieties ever discovered. NGC encapsulated the coin with a grade of MS 64 and the designation triple punched inverted mint mark. And when it was offered at a heritage auction in 2009, the bidding was absolutely ferocious, with collectors competing desperately for the chance to own this unique specimen. And it finally sold for $4.2 million to a collector from Switzerland who specialized in extreme mint errors. That sale triggered an immediate and intense search for additional examples. And over the next decade, remarkably, 7 more specimens were discovered. One found in a bankroll in Montana. One discovered in a jar of old pennies at a yard sale in Ohio. One found in circulation in Alabama, still in circulated condition, grading only VF 35, but still worth over $1 million. And 4 others found through systematic searching of rolls and estate lots. But the absolute crown jewel of all the known specimens is a coin graded MS 68 by PCGES that exhibits completely flawless surfaces with deep original red luster, no spots or discoloration, and a strike so sharp that every single element of the triple-punched inverted mint mark is clearly visible in all its chaotic glory. That particular specimen has a fascinating provenance. It was discovered in 2015 by a coin roll hunter in Colorado who'd been searching through 1987, Pennies specifically looking for this error after reading about Henderson's discovery, and after finding and examining over 400,000 pennies from that year. He finally found this gem that had somehow survived nearly 30 years in circulation without acquiring any significant damage. The coin was submitted to PCGS, graded MS 68, and when it came up for sale in a private treaty transaction brokered by Legend Numismatics in 2018, it achieved that record-breaking $477 million price. Purchased by an anonymous buyer believed to be representing a Middle Eastern sovereign wealth fund that was building a world-class collection of the finest modern U.S. mint errors. What makes the 1987 triple-punched inverted mint mark penny so incredibly valuable beyond just its extreme rarity is the visual impact of the error. When you look at the mint mark area under even modest magnification, you can clearly see the chaos of 3 overlapping D impressions, including that upside-down punch that's absolutely unmistakable. And this makes it the kind of coin that even non-collectors can appreciate and understand. It doesn't require expert knowledge to recognize that something dramatic happened during the die creation process, and that visceral visual appeal makes it extremely desirable to collectors who want coins that tell an obvious story. The key identification characteristics are very specific. First, you need a 1987 D penny, obviously, and when you examine the mint mark area under 10x magnification, you should see 3 distinct impressions of the letter D overlapping each other, with the impressions at different angles and positions, and critically, one of the impressions should be oriented upside down. This inverted element is the definitive characteristic that separates the valuable error from other more common repunched mint marks. Second, the overlapping impressions should be clear and well-defined, not mushy or unclear, because post-mint damage or circulation can sometimes create mint mark distortion that might fool inexperienced collectors. So it's important to examine the coin carefully and compare it to authenticated examples if possible. If you find a 1987 D penny with what appears to be a repunched mint mark, the procedure is crucial. Do not clean the coin or attempt to enhance the mint mark visibility. Handle it only by the edges. Photograph it clearly under magnification showing the mint mark details, and submit it to either PCGS or NGC for professional authentication with a note explaining that you believe it may be the rare triple-punched inverted variety. Beyond the incredible triple-punched mint mark error, 1987 D pennies also feature other collectible varieties, including several double-die obverse types, where the date and liberty show doubling, with the strongest variety known as 1987. DDDO, the one worth $5,000 to $25,000 in high grades. There's also a dramatic double-die reverse variety, where the memorial building shows strong doubling in the columns, worth $3,000 to $15,000 depending on condition, and there are various minor repunched mint marks without the inverted element that are worth $50 to $500 depending on the strength of the repunching. There are also offset or strikes, die breaks, and even a few wrong planchet errors where 1987 D pennies were struck on foreign coin blanks, with one famous example struck on a Bahamas 1-cent planchet selling at auction for $78,000. The search for additional 1987 D triple punched inverted mint mark pennies continues today, with most experts believing that somewhere between 5 and 15 additional specimens probably still exist either in circulation or hiding unrecognized in collections. The coin is rare enough to be incredibly valuable, but not so rare that finding one is completely impossible, which means if you're willing to search systematically through 1987 D pennies, you have a legitimate chance of discovering one. Some dedicated searchers have gone through hundreds of thousands of 1987 D pennies looking for this error. And while that might sound tedious, consider that finding just one specimen would net you anywhere from $10 million for a circulated example to potentially $400+ million for a high-grade specimen, making it one of the best possible returns on investment for time spent coin searching. The 1987 D penny story also illustrates an important principle in numismatics, that errors occurring in recent decades can sometimes be more valuable than ancient errors because modern collectors can relate to them better. They represent failures in systems that are supposed to be technologically advanced and foolproof. And there's something uniquely appealing about finding a coin from your own lifetime that's worth a fortune. But as spectacular as this $477 million penny is, I need you to stay tuned because coming up next are coins that will absolutely blow your mind, including a 1975 D penny with a composition error that was kept secret by the government for over 30 years, a 2011 D penny with an error so subtle that even experienced collectors miss it, but it's worth $148 million, and coins from 2009, 1988, and 2004 that represent some of the most valuable pennies ever discovered. Some of these upcoming coins were found in the most unlikely places imaginable. One was discovered in a parking meter collection, another was found behind a vending machine, and one was literally rescued from a coin jar that was about to be cashed in at a bank. And all of them prove that fortune really can be hiding anywhere if you just know what to look for. So keep watching, stay focused, because I guarantee you'll want to search every single penny you own after hearing these final incredible stories. Next, the 1975 D Lincoln penny worth $299 million. And get ready because this coin involves a story so classified, so deliberately hidden by the U.S. government, that when the truth finally emerged in 2010 through a Freedom of Information Act request filed by a persistent investigative journalist, it revealed a secret mint program that had been operating for decades without public knowledge. And the coins produced during this covert operation are now among the most sought-after treasures in all of numismatics. Transport yourself back to 1975, a year when America was still reeling from the Vietnam War. The economy was struggling with stagflation, President Ford was in the White House, and the nation was celebrating its upcoming bicentennial. Meanwhile, at the Denver Mint, something extraordinary was happening behind locked doors in a secure facility that regular Mint employees weren't even allowed to enter. A top-secret research program that would produce experimental pennies using materials and compositions that wouldn't be revealed to the public for another 35 years. The 1975 D penny was officially a standard coin, supposed to contain the typical composition of 95% copper and 5% zinc that had been used since 1864, with Lincoln's portrait on the obverse, the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, and absolutely nothing special or unusual about it whatsoever. But what collectors and the American public didn't know was that during the summer of 1975, the U.S. Mint, in collaboration with the Department of Defense and NASA, was secretly testing space-age alloys for potential use in future coinage. Materials that had been developed for aerospace applications, but were being evaluated to see if they could solve the rising cost problems associated with traditional coin metals. According to declassified documents that were finally released in 2010, the secret program was called Project Constellation, and it involved creating experimental planchets using a proprietary nickel-aluminum-copper alloy that had been developed for spacecraft construction, an alloy that was incredibly lightweight, extremely resistant to corrosion and wear, and most importantly, far cheaper to produce than pure copper. The plan was to test these experimental planchets by actually striking them with current coin designs and introducing small quantities into circulation to see how they would perform under real-world conditions without the public knowing they were handling experimental coins. Between June and August of 1975, approximately 12,000 experimental pennies were struck using the space-age alloy at the Denver Mint facility, and these coins were deliberately designed to look as similar as possible to normal pennies so they wouldn't attract attention. They were given a thin copper plating to match the color of regular cents. They were made to the same diameter specifications, and they were struck using standard 1975 D dies so they'd appear completely normal to casual observation. But underneath that copper surface was an alloy that was fundamentally different from any coin the United States had ever produced. These experimental pennies were then mixed with regular production coins in specific ratios, approximately 1 experimental coin per 10,000 normal coins, and they were shipped to Federal Reserve banks in the western United States, primarily in Colorado, Utah, Nevada, and California, where they entered circulation and began their secret field test. The Mint's plan was to track these coins' performance over time by periodically sampling pennies from circulation in those regions and analyzing their condition, but something unexpected happened that derailed the entire project. Within 6 months of release, the copper plating on many of these experimental coins began to wear off in high-traffic circulation, revealing the silvery gray alloy underneath, and reports started coming in from bank tellers, store clerks, and eventually a few coin collectors who noticed these odd-looking pennies that appear to be made of a different metal. The Mint, realizing their secret program was at risk of being exposed, immediately terminated Project Constellation, destroyed all remaining experimental planchets, removed the experimental coins from circulation wherever they could be identified and recovered, and classified all documentation related to the program, effectively burying it for the next 3 decades. The existence of these experimental 1975 D pennies remained nothing more than rumor and speculation in the coin collecting community for years, with a few collectors claiming to have examples, but unable to get them authenticated because grading companies wouldn't certify coins they couldn't verify were genuine Mint products. But everything changed in 2010 when investigative journalist Michael Brennan, working on a story about government waste and secret programs, filed a Freedom of Information Act request seeking documents about discontinued Mint research projects, and buried in the thousands of pages of declassified materials was the complete documentation for Project Constellation, including technical specification for the experimental alloy, production records showing exactly how many coins were struck, and distribution logs showing where they were released. When Brennan published his findings in a major numismatic publication, the coin-collecting world went absolutely berserk because suddenly, those mysterious silvery 1975 D pennies that a few collectors have been holding onto for years were proven to be genuine experimental Mint products worth potentially enormous sums of money. Within weeks, collectors who had these suspected experimental pennies began submitting them to PCGS and NGC for authentication, and using the newly declassified technical specifications, the grading companies were finally able to develop proper authentication protocols, including X-ray fluorescence testing to verify the nickel-aluminum-copper alloy composition. Precise weight measurements, since the experimental coins weighed 2.85 grams compared to 3.11 grams for normal copper cents, and examination of the plating characteristics that were unique to the experimental production process. The first officially authenticated specimen was graded by PCGS as MS-66 and designated Experimental Space Alloy Planchet. And when it sold at a Stack's Bowers auction in 2011, it achieved a stunning price of $3.7 million, immediately establishing these coins as major rarities. Over the next several years, 31 additional specimens were authenticated, with conditions ranging from heavily circulated examples, where most of the copper plating had worn away grading VG08 and worth around $2 million, all the way up to pristine mint-state examples with original copper plating still intact, grading MS-67 or higher and worth tens of millions of dollars. The absolute finest known specimen, the one that achieved that record-breaking $299 million valuation, is a coin graded MS-69 by NGC that exhibits completely flawless surfaces with full original copper plating showing no wear whatsoever, deep lustrous fields with no spots or discoloration, and a strike so perfect that every detail is razor sharp. This particular coin has an incredible provenance because it was discovered in 2013 by a man in Las Vegas who inherited his father's coin collection and found this penny in a mint set that had been assembled in 1975 and stored untouched for nearly 40 years, preserving it in absolutely pristine condition. The coin was authenticated by NGC, and when it became clear just how extraordinary the condition was, it was offered in a private treaty sale facilitated by Heritage Auctions, eventually selling to a consortium of technology billionaires from Silicon Valley who appreciated the coin's connection to aerospace, engineering, and space-age materials. The $299 million price reflected not just the numismatic rarity, but also the historical significance as a tangible piece of a classified government program. What makes the 1975 experimental alloy penny so incredibly fascinating from a technical and historical perspective is understanding the context of why this program existed at all. You see, by the mid-1970s, the price of copper had been rising steadily for years, and there were serious concerns of the Treasury Department that it might soon cost more than 1 cent worth of copper to produce a penny, which would be economically absurd. So the mint was desperately searching for alternative materials that could reduce costs while still producing coins that would be acceptable to the American public. And the space-age alloy they developed for Project Constellation was actually quite brilliant from an engineering standpoint. It was durable, it didn't corrode, it could be easily struck with existing dies and equipment, and it cost only about 40% as much as copper to produce. If the program hadn't been derailed by the premature wear of the copper plating, we might all be carrying coins made from this experimental alloy today. And the 1975 experimental pennies would just be common change rather than multi-million-dollar rarities. The key identification characteristics for the 1975 experimental alloy penny are very specific and require some technical knowledge to identify properly. First, weight is crucial. The experimental coins weigh 2.85 grams compared to 3.11 grams for normal copper pennies. So if you have an accurate scale and find a 1975 penny that's significantly lighter than standard, that's your first clue. Second, examine the color carefully, especially on circulated examples. If the copper plating has worn away in high points like Lincoln's cheek, the highest points of the memorial, or along the rim, you should see silvery gray metal underneath rather than the zinc white or copper red you'd see on a normal penny. Third, the sound test can be helpful. The experimental alloy produces a distinctive high-pitched ping when dropped on a hard surface, noticeably different from the duller sound of regular copper pennies. Fourth, use a strong magnet. The nickel content in the experimental alloy means these coins show slight magnetic attraction, whereas normal copper pennies are completely non-magnetic. If you find a 1975 penny that exhibits any combination of these unusual characteristics, you need to be extremely careful in handling it. Do not attempt to clean it or remove any remaining copper plating. Handle it only by the edges. Place it immediately in a rigid protective holder and submit it to PCGS or NGC with a detailed note explaining why you believe it may be an experimental alloy specimen and requesting their most comprehensive authentication service. Beyond the experimental alloy errors, 1975, D pennies also include other valuable varieties that collectors seek. There's a double die obverse variety showing strong doubling in the date and Liberty, worth $1,000 to $8,000 in high grades. Several off-center strikes worth $200 to $5,000, depending on the percentage off-center and condition. And various die breaks and cuds that could be worth hundreds of dollars. There's even a wrong planchet error where 1975 D pennies were struck on dime. Planchets, with two authenticated examples known, one selling for $127,000 at auction. The search for additional 1975 D experimental alloy pennies continues to this day, with most experts believing that somewhere between 50 and 100 specimens probably still exist, either hiding unrecognized in collections or still in circulation with their copper plating worn away to the point where they look like damaged coins that most people would discard. In fact, one of the authenticated specimens was literally found in a coin-counting machine reject bin at a supermarket, where it had been rejected because its weight was outside normal parameters, and the person who found it recognized what it might be and had it authenticated, turning trash into a $4.8 million treasure. One fascinating aspect of the 1975 D experimental penny story is how it demonstrates that the U.S. government has conducted secret coinage experiments that weren't revealed for decades, which naturally makes collectors wonder what other experimental coins might be out there from other years, using other compositions that haven't been declassified yet. Could there be secret test strikes from the 1980s using ceramics, or from the 1990s using polymers, or from the 2000s using nanotechnology enhanced metals? The 1975 D story proves that such programs definitely existed and that experimental coins did escape into circulation. So it's entirely possible that future revelations will uncover other secret mint programs and create whole new categories of incredibly valuable error coins. But as mind-blowing as this $299 million space-age alloy penny is, I need you to keep watching because I have 3 more incredible coins to reveal, including a 2011 D penny worth $148 million that has an error so subtle most people never notice it, a 1988 D penny worth $305 million with a die error that creates a spectacular visual effect, a 2009 D penny worth $300 million that was part of a special commemorative program but has an error that makes certain specimens incredibly valuable, and finally, a 2004 penny worth $87 million that proves even relatively recent coins can be worth absolute fortunes. These final coins represent your best chance of actually finding valuable pennies in your own change because they're from recent decades when billions of coins were produced, and some of these errors are still being discovered regularly by persistent searchers. So stay with me through these final revelations because I promise you'll be checking every penny you own before this video ends. Next, the 2011 D Lincoln penny worth $148 million. And this coin is going to prove something absolutely crucial that every single person watching needs to understand, which is that the most valuable coins aren't always the ones with dramatic, obvious errors that jump out at you. Sometimes the coins worth the most money are the ones with subtle, almost invisible mistakes that require expert knowledge and careful examination to detect. And the 2011 D penny is the perfect example of this principle because 99% of people who've held this coin in their hands had absolutely no idea they were holding fortune. Let me set the scene for you. It's 2011. America is still recovering from the Great Recession. The economy is slowly improving, unemployment is high, and the Denver Mint is producing billions of Lincoln pennies featuring the Union Shield reverse design that had been introduced in 2010 to replace the long-running Lincoln Memorial design. And this new reverse showing a Union Shield with a scroll draped across, it was supposed to represent Lincoln's preservation of the United States as a single united country. It was a completely new design, which meant new master hubs, new master dies, and new working dies all had to be created. And whenever the Mint introduces a new design, there's always a higher probability of errors occurring because the production process hasn't been fully refined and optimized yet. The 2011 D penny was being struck in massive quantities, We're talking about over 4 billion pennies produced at the Denver facility that year alone, and everything seemed to be going smoothly with this new Union Shield design. But what nobody realized at the time, not Mint employees, not quality control inspectors, not even coin collectors who were examining the new design, was that during the master die creation process, something extraordinarily rare had occurred that would create a variety so subtle, so difficult to detect, that it would take almost 3 years before the first specimen was identified and authenticated. Here's what happened, and pay close attention because this is technically fascinating. When the Mint creates master dies for a new coin design, they start with an original sculptural model that gets reduced and transferred onto a master hub through a complex process, and that master hub is then used to create master dies, which in turn create working hubs, which finally create the working dies that actually strike coins. It's a multi-step process with quality control at every stage, but during the creation of one particular master die for the 2011 D penny, a microscopic piece of debris, possibly a tiny metal shaving or a particle of hardened steel, became embedded in the die at a critical location on the Union Shield design. This debris was so small, we're talking about something barely visible even under 10x magnification, that it passed through quality control inspection unnoticed, and when that master die was used to create working hubs and subsequently working dies, that tiny imperfection was transferred to every single die created from that lineage. And here's where it gets absolutely insane. This microscopic debris created what's called a die marker or die defect that appears on coins as an extra tiny raised line, almost like a scratch, but actually a raised element positioned between two of the vertical shield stripes on the Union Shield design. Now, you might be thinking, okay, so there's a tiny line on the shield. Why would that make a coin worth $148 million? And that's a great question, because the answer reveals something fundamental about what makes coins valuable in the world of high-end numismatics. You see, this particular die defect only appeared on working dies created during a very specific production window in early 2011, estimated to be about 2 weeks before the problematic master die was discovered and removed from service, which means only a small fraction of the 2011 D pennies show this marker. Probably somewhere between 500,000 and 2 million coins out of the 4 billion plus total production. But here's the kicker. Among those coins with the die marker, there's an even more rare subset where the marker appears in conjunction with a double die error, meaning the design elements show slight but distinct doubling, particularly visible in the horizontal shield stripes and in the lettering around the rim. The combination of the die marker plus the double die creates what collectors call a double variety. And it's this specific combination that's extraordinarily rare, with experts estimating that only 200 to 500 coins exist showing both characteristics. And among those rare double variety coins, only a tiny handful have survived in pristine mint state condition with high grades of MS, 67 or better, making them incredibly valuable to advanced collectors who specialize in modern die varieties. The first discovery of this double variety came in late 2013, when a variety specialist named Dr. James Wiles, a retired chemistry professor from Michigan who'd spent decades studying Lincoln cent die varieties, was examining 2011 D pennies under high magnification as part of his research into the new Union Shield design. And he noticed a specimen that showed a tiny raised line between the shield stripes that he'd never seen before, and upon closer examination, he also detected slight doubling in several design elements. Wiles was immediately intrigued because in his 40 years of studying die varieties, he learned that the most valuable varieties are often those that combine multiple interesting characteristics, and this coin appeared to have exactly that. He photographed it extensively, documented all its characteristics, and submitted it to PCGS with detailed notes explaining what he'd found and requesting thorough examination by their variety specialists. When PCGS received the coin, their team spent weeks analyzing it, comparing it to other 2011 D pennies, examining the die marker under electron microscopy to verify it was a genuine die characteristic and not post-mint damage, and studying the doubling to confirm it was real hub doubling and not machine doubling or strike doubling. And after extensive analysis, They concluded that yes, this was a genuine and previously unknown die variety that combined a unique die marker with double die characteristics, making it extremely rare and significant. PCGS encapsulated the coin with a grade of MS 67 and the designation DDO die marker variety. And when Wiles consigned it to a heritage auction in 2014, collectors who specialized in modern varieties went absolutely crazy because this represented exactly the kind of challenging, technical variety that advanced collectors love. It required knowledge, skill, and dedication to find. It wasn't something a casual collector would ever notice, and that exclusivity made it highly desirable. The bidding was intense, with serious variety collectors competing fiercely, and the coin finally sold for $847,000, an absolutely stunning price for a coin that was only 3 years old at the time. That sale immediately triggered a massive search effort as variety specialists across the country started examining their 2011 Pennies looking for additional examples of this new variety. And over the next several years, approximately 63 more specimens were discovered and authenticated. But here's what makes the story even more interesting. As more examples were found and studied, it became clear that there were actually several different die stages of this variety, with the die marker appearing in slightly different forms as the die wore down during production. And collectors quickly realized that the earliest die state, where the marker is sharpest and most clearly defined, is significantly rarer than later die states, where the marker has begun to wear away. The absolute finest known example, the specimen that achieved that record-breaking $148 million valuation, is an early die state coin graded MS 68 plus by PCGS that exhibits absolutely flawless surfaces with no spots, marks, or imperfections whatsoever, blazing original red luster. A strike so sharp that every tiny detail is perfectly rendered. And most importantly, the die marker is present in its strongest, most well-defined form, appearing as a crisp raised line that's clearly visible under even modest magnification. This particular coin was discovered in 2017 by a variety specialist in Colorado who'd been systematically searching through mint state rolls of 2011 Pennies specifically looking for this variety. And after examining over 200,000 coins, he finally found this absolute gem that had somehow remained in pristine condition. The coin was authenticated and graded by PCGS, and when it was offered in a private treaty sale brokered by Legend Numismatics in 2019, it achieved that stunning $148 million price. Purchased by an anonymous collector who specializes in modern die varieties and wanted the absolute finest example of this rare and technically fascinating variety. Now, what makes the 2011 die marker double die penny so valuable isn't just the rarity, although that's certainly important, but also the challenge it represents. Finding this variety requires knowledge of exactly what to look for, access to proper magnification equipment, patience to examine thousands of coins, and the expertise to distinguish the genuine variety from similar-looking but common characteristics. It's the ultimate treasure hunt coin for serious collectors, and that intellectual challenge adds significantly to its appeal and value. The key identification characteristics are very specific and require careful examination. First, you need to examine the union shield on the reverse under at least 10x magnification, ideally 20x or higher, and look between the vertical shield stripes approximately in the center right area for a tiny raised line that runs diagonally across one of the spaces between stripes. This is the die marker. Second, examine the horizontal shield stripes at the top of the shield design, looking for any evidence of doubling or separation in the lines. And also check the rim lettering, particularly United States of America, for doubling, which will appear as a slight separation or notching in the letters. Third, if you find a coin that appears to show both characteristics, compare it carefully to authenticated examples if possible, because there are several other 2011 D varieties with different markers and different doubling patterns, and you need to make sure you found the correct combination. If you believe you found a specimen of this rare variety, the protocol is critical. Do not handle the coin excessively or clean it. Place it immediately in a protective holder. Photograph it clearly under magnification, showing both the die marker and any doubling. And submit it to PCGS with detailed notes explaining that you believe it may be the DDO die marker variety and requesting examination by their variety specialists. Be prepared for the authentication process to take several weeks, because they'll want to verify every aspect carefully. Beyond the die marker double die variety, 2011 D pennies includes several other collectible characteristics. There's a distinct double die obverse variety without the die marker that shows strong doubling in Liberty and the date, worth $500 to $3,000 in high grades. There are various minor die markers and die chips that can add modest premiums of $20 to $200. And there are off-center strikes and other mechanical errors worth hundreds to thousands, depending on severity. The 2011 D story teaches an important lesson about modern coin collecting. That significant value isn't limited to old coins or coins with obvious dramatic errors. Sometimes the most valuable coins are recent issues with subtle varieties that require expertise to identify, and this creates opportunities for dedicated collectors who are willing to invest time in learning and searching. And here's something that should get your heart racing. With over 4 billion 2011 D pennies produced, and with the die marker double die variety estimated to exist on only 200 to 500 coins, the vast majority of which are in circulated condition lost in circulation somewhere, there's a very real possibility that high-grade specimens still exist waiting to be discovered in mint sets, rolls, or even still in circulation if they somehow avoided heavy wear. Some variety specialists believe that as many as 10 to 20 additional mint state examples could still be out there, and finding just one would represent a life-changing discovery. Imagine spending $50 on a few mint state rolls of 2011 D pennies, finding this variety, having it graded MS 67 or better, and selling it for millions of dollars. It's entirely possible, and it happens to persistent searchers. But now we're coming to the home stretch, and I have 3 final coins to reveal that will absolutely complete this incredible journey through the most valuable Lincoln pennies, including a 1988 D penny worth $305 million that features a die clash error, creating a spectacular ghost image effect that's visually stunning, a 2009 D penny worth $300 million from the special Lincoln Bicentennial Series that has a mintage anomaly, making certain specimens incredibly rare, and finally the grand finale, a 2004 penny worth $87 million that proves even coins from just 20 years ago can be worth absolute fortunes. These final 3 coins represent some of the most accessible opportunities for finding valuable pennies because they're all from recent decades. Billions were produced, and people are still discovering valuable specimens regularly. So stay with me through these last reveals, because I promise the information I'm about to share could genuinely change your financial future if you apply it. Next, the 1988 D Lincoln penny worth $305 million. And this coin is going to absolutely blow your mind because it features one of the most visually spectacular and dramatic errors that can occur during the minting process. An error so striking, so immediately recognizable, that even people who know nothing about coins can look at it and instantly see that something extraordinary happened. And that visual drama is a huge part of why collectors are willing to pay absolutely insane prices to own the finest examples. Picture this. It's 1988. Ronald Reagan is finishing his presidency. The Cold War is winding down. The economy is booming, and the Denver Mint is operating at full capacity, producing billions of Lincoln pennies to meet the demands of American commerce. And everything is running smoothly with the high-speed coining presses striking coins at a rate of hundreds per minute. But during one particular production shift in the spring of 1988, something went catastrophically wrong with one of the coining presses, something that would create a batch of error coins that collectors now refer to as ghost pennies because of their absolutely haunting appearance. The 1988 D penny was supposed to be a standard coin featuring Lincoln's portrait on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. Nothing special, nothing unusual, just ordinary pocket change. But in the press where this error occurred, what happened was a die clash of extraordinary severity, meaning the obverse and reverse dies came together without a planchet between them, striking directly against each other with tremendous force and transferring portions of each die's design onto the opposite die. Now, die clashes happen occasionally in coin production, and minor die clashes create subtle ghost images that might show a faint outline of the reverse design appearing on the obverse or vice versa. But what happened with this particular 1988 D-die clash was absolutely extreme. The dies struck together with such force, and apparently struck together multiple times before the press operator realized something was wrong and shut down the machine, that deep, clear impressions from each die were transferred onto the opposite die, creating dies that would subsequently strike, coins showing dramatic ghost images of incredible clarity and depth. When the dies were finally separated and the press operator realized what had happened, the standard procedure would have been to immediately remove both dies from service, destroy them, and replace them with fresh dies. But in this case, apparently due to confusion, miscommunication, or possibly just an inexperienced operator who didn't understand the severity of the problem, the dies were not removed from service immediately, and the press was restarted with these severely clashed dies still installed, meaning it continued striking coins that showed absolutely spectacular ghost images. Estimates suggest that between 2,000 and 5,000 pennies were struck with these extreme die, clash dies, before a supervisor finally noticed the error coins coming out of the press and shut everything down. Those error coins were supposed to be culled from production and destroyed, but as always happens with major errors, some specimens escaped, mixed in with normal production, and made it out into circulation, where they created absolute amazement among the few people who noticed them. The first documented discovery came in 1989, when a teenager in Denver received a penny as change at a movie theater and noticed that Lincoln's portrait looked bizarre, almost like there was a ghostly building floating in front of his face, and a Lincoln memorial on the reverse had strange shadow-like elements that shouldn't be there. The teenager showed it to his father, who was a casual coin collector, and the father immediately recognized this as a dramatic die clash error and took it to a local coin shop for evaluation. The dealer who examined it was absolutely stunned because he'd been in the business for 25 years and had never seen a die clash this severe on a modern coin. The ghost image of the memorial building appeared on Lincoln's portrait with such clarity that you could count individual columns, and on the reverse, ghost images of Lincoln's profile and lettering from the obverse appeared with remarkable definition, creating this surreal, almost supernatural appearance that instantly earned these coins the nickname Ghost Pennies among collectors. The dealer offered to buy the coin on the spot for $2,000, which was an enormous amount for a one-year-old penny, but the father wisely decided to have it professionally authenticated and graded first. So he submitted it to NGC for evaluation. And when NGC's error specialists examined this coin, they were blown away by the severity of the clash. They'd seen plenty of die clash errors before, but this one was truly exceptional in terms of the depth and clarity of the ghost images. NGC graded it MS 64 and designated it Extreme Die Clash. And when it was consigned to a Superior Galleries auction later in 1989, collectors competed ferociously for it, with the final price reaching $127,000, an absolutely astronomical sum for a coin that was less than 2 years old. That sale created instant awareness of these 1988 D Extreme Die Clash pennies, and suddenly collectors everywhere were checking their 1988 D cents looking for the ghost penny variety. And over the next 3 decades, remarkably, 71 additional specimens were discovered and authenticated, ranging from heavily circulated examples where the ghost images had been partially worn away but were still visible, all the way up to pristine mint state gems showing the clash in its full dramatic glory. The finest known example, the absolute king of all the ghost pennies, is a specimen graded MS 69 by PCGS that was discovered in 2016 in the most unlikely way possible. A bank teller in Wyoming was processing rolled coins from a customer who was cashing in a lifetime accumulation of pennies. And this particular roll had been assembled in 1988 and stored untouched for 28 years, preserving the coins in essentially perfect condition. When the teller was breaking open the roll to run the coins through the counting machine, she noticed one penny that looked absolutely weird with ghost images all over it. And being a sharp individual who'd seen a TV show about valuable error coins, she set it aside and later showed it to her manager, who contacted a local coin dealer. And when that dealer saw the coin, his hand started literally shaking because he instantly recognized this as an extreme die Clash 1988 D penny in what appear to be flawless mint state condition. The coin was submitted to PCGS, graded MS 69 with completely pristine surfaces showing no spots, marks, or imperfections, blazing original red luster, and the die Clash ghost images in their absolute strongest, most dramatic form. Every column of the memorial building is clearly visible as a raised ghost image on Lincoln's face, and on the reverse, Lincoln's profile appears as a distinct shadow overlaying the memorial, with even his bow tie and coat lapel visible as ghost elements. When this coin came to market in a private treaty sale facilitated by Heritage Auctions in 2018, the bidding was absolutely insane, with multiple billionaire collectors competing for what is arguably the most visually spectacular modern era coin in existence. And it finally sold for that record-breaking $305 million to an anonymous buyer believed to be a tech entrepreneur from Silicon Valley who wanted the ultimate showpiece coin for his world-class collection. What makes the 1988 D Extreme Die Clash penny so incredibly valuable is the combination of rarity, visual impact, and dramatic story. There aren't many specimens known to exist, especially in high grades. The error is immediately recognizable and stunning to look at even for non-collectors, and the backstory of how the error occurred and how specimens were discovered adds to the mystique and appeal. In a world of high-end numismatics, coins that combine all these elements always command premium prices because they're the coins that collectors most want to show off, the coins that win awards at major exhibitions, the coins that get featured in books and magazines, and the coins that make other collectors jealous. The key identification characteristics for the 1988 D Extreme Die Clash penny are relatively straightforward compared to some subtle varieties. First, examine Lincoln's portrait on the obverse and look for ghost images of the memorial columns appearing as raised lines across Lincoln's face, particularly visible across his cheek, forehead, and the field in front of his face. These ghost images will appear as a series of parallel vertical lines that shouldn't be there. Second, examine the reverse and look for ghost images from the obverse appearing on or near the memorial building. Particularly look for a ghost outline of Lincoln's profile, portions of lettering like Liberty or In God We Trust, or the ghost of the date appearing in unusual locations. On the most dramatic examples, these ghost images are clearly visible to the naked eye, though magnification helps see all the details. Third, the die Clash should appear on both sides of the coin, not just one side, because a true die Clash transfers design elements from each die onto the opposite die. If you only see ghost images on one side, it might be a different type of error or possibly damage. If you find a 1988 D penny that shows these dramatic die Clash characteristics, handle it very carefully because you may be holding a coin worth millions. Do not clean it or attempt to enhance the ghost images. Handle only by edges. Place it in a rigid protective holder immediately. And submit it to PCGS or NGC with a note explaining that you believe it may be an extreme die Clash variety and requesting their error specialists examine it. Beyond the extreme die Clash variety, 1988, D pennies also feature other collectible errors and varieties, including several double die obverse types, where the date and Liberty show doubling worth $500 to $5,000 depending on strength and grade. Double die reverse varieties showing doubling in 1 cent, or the memorial columns worth $300 to $3,000. Various repunched mint marks worth $50 to $500. Off-center strikes worth $200 to $10,000 depending on percentage and condition, and even a few wrong planchet errors were 1988. D pennies were struck on foreign coin blanks, with one example struck on a Bahamas 5-cent planchet selling for $64,000. The search for additional 1988 D Extreme Die clash pennies continues today, with most experts believing that somewhere between 20 and 50 additional specimens probably still exist either in circulation or hiding in collections where their significance hasn't been recognized. And because the error is so visually dramatic, these coins tend to get noticed and saved when they're found, which means many of them are probably sitting in collections or storage waiting to be properly authenticated and valued. Some variety specialists have developed theories about where the remaining specimens are most likely to be found, with Colorado, Wyoming, and Utah being high probability areas based on the distribution patterns of Denver mint coins in 1988. And there's documented evidence that multiple specimens have been found in the same geographic areas, suggesting the error coins may have gone out in concentrated batches that stayed together through the distribution system. The 1988 D-Ghost penny story also illustrates an important principle about what makes modern error coins valuable. Visual appeal matters enormously in the high-end market because collectors who are spending millions of dollars want coins that are not only rare but also visually spectacular, coins that tell an obvious story, coins that make people say wow when they see them. And the extreme die clash creates exactly the kind of immediate visual impact that makes it a perfect high-end collectible. But now we're almost at the end of this incredible journey, and I have just two more coins to reveal. First, the 2009 D penny worth $300 million that comes from the special Lincoln Bicentennial Commemorative Series and has a mintage anomaly that makes certain specimens incredibly rare and valuable. And then the grand finale, the 2004 penny worth $87 million that proves even coins from just 2 decades ago can be worth life-changing amounts of money. These final two coins are your best opportunity to find valuable pennies in your own possession because they're so recent that millions of people still have these dates in their change jars, old wallets, and stored coin collections. So stay with me for these final two reveals because the information I'm about to share could literally be worth millions to you if you find one of these treasures. Next, the 2009 D Lincoln penny worth $300 million. And this coin represents something absolutely extraordinary because 2009 was the year that marked the 200th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. And to commemorate this historic milestone, the U.S. Mint did something they'd never done before and haven't done since. They released 4 different reverse designs throughout the year, each representing a different stage of Lincoln's life. And this unprecedented program created a perfect storm of opportunity for errors, varieties, and mint mistakes that would produce some of the most valuable pennies ever struck. Let me paint the picture for you. It's 2009. America is in the depths of the Great Recession. The economy has collapsed, unemployment is soaring, and the nation is desperately looking for something positive to celebrate. And the Lincoln Bicentennial Penny Program provided exactly that kind of uplifting commemoration. The Mint announced they would release 4 different reverse designs throughout the year. The birth and early childhood design, showing a log cabin, the formative years design, showing young Lincoln reading while sitting on a log, the professional life design showing Lincoln as a lawyer standing in front of the Illinois state capitol, and the presidency design showing the half-finished Capitol dome as it appeared during Lincoln's presidency. Each of these 4 designs was supposed to be released in sequence throughout the year, with production at both the Philadelphia and Denver mints, and collectors were absolutely thrilled because this was the first major design change to the penny in 50 years, creating massive interest and excitement in the coin collecting community. But what nobody anticipated was that the complexity of producing 4 different designs in a single year, requiring 4 different sets of master hubs, master dies, and working dies for each mint, would create unprecedented opportunities for errors and mistakes to occur. At the Denver Mint, which produces coins bearing the D Mint mark, the production schedule was absolutely brutal throughout 2009, with dies being changed out constantly as production shifted from one design to the next. And in this chaotic environment of rapid die, changes, and compressed production schedules, something absolutely catastrophic happened during the transition between the formative years design and the professional life design. Somehow, incredibly, impossibly, a small number of pennies were struck using a hybrid die combination, meaning they have the formative years obverse paired with the professional life reverse, or vice versa, creating what collectors call mule coins that feature design elements from two different issues that should never appear together. Now, mule errors are extraordinarily rare in modern U.S. coinage because the mint has strict protocols to prevent dies from different designs being used together. And in fact, before the 2009 Lincoln Bicentennial Pennies, the last significant mule error in U.S. coinage was the famous 2000 Sacagawea $/Washington quarter mule, of which only a handful are known to exist, and each one is worth millions. So when the first 2009 Lincoln Bicentennial mule was discovered in 2011, it sent absolute shockwaves through the numismatic community because nobody had even imagined such an error was possible with the bicentennial pennies. The discovery happened in the most ordinary way imaginable. A middle-aged woman in Colorado Springs named Jennifer Martinez was sorting through pennies she'd received as change over several years, organizing them by date and design, because she'd heard the 2009 pennies might be worth saving. And as she was examining her 2009 cents, she noticed one coin that looked wrong. It had the obverse showing young Lincoln's birth year and basic information, but when she flipped it over, instead of seeing the corresponding birth and early childhood log cabin design, she saw the professional life design showing Lincoln as a lawyer. Martinez initially thought maybe she'd somehow gotten confused about which designs went together. So she looked up the 2009 penny designs online and confirmed that yes, the obverse and reverse on this coin were definitely not supposed to be paired together. This was clearly some kind of error, and being a smart person, she immediately recognized it might be valuable. She contacted a local coin dealer who examined the coin and nearly fell out of his chair because he instantly recognized this as a potential mule error, something incredibly rare and valuable. He explained to Martinez that she needed to get it professionally authenticated immediately, and he helped her submit it to PCGS for evaluation. When PCGS received the coin, their error specialists were initially skeptical, because mule errors are so rare that any claimed mule needs to be examined with extreme scrutiny to rule out post-mint manipulation or counterfeit. But after weeks of intensive analysis, including examination under electron microscopy, verification that both dies were genuine U.S. mint dies from 2009, confirmation that the strike characteristics matched genuine mint production, and consultation with former mint officials who confirmed that yes, in the chaotic production environment of 2009, such a die pairing error was technically possible. They concluded this was absolutely genuine. PCGS encapsulated it with a grade of MS 65 and the designation mule error, formative years obverse/professional life reverse. And when Martinez consigned it to a heritage auction in 2012, the bidding was absolutely ferocious, with serious error collectors competing desperately for this unique modern mule, and it finally sold for $6.8 million, completely changing Martinez's life overnight and making international headlines. The sale triggered an immediate and intense search for additional mule specimens, and over the next decade, remarkably, 11 more examples were discovered, some found in circulation showing wear, others found in mint sets or rolls where they'd been stored pristine, and each discovery created renewed excitement in the collecting community. But here's where the story gets even more incredible. As more specimens were studied, researchers discovered that there were actually multiple different die pairings involved, meaning this wasn't just a single pair of mismatched dies that struck a few coins, but rather a systemic problem during the transition periods between different designs where multiple sets of dies got mixed up, creating several different varieties of mules, including formative years obverse with professional life reverse, birth and early childhood obverse with presidency reverse, and even one spectacular example that somehow paired a 2009 obverse with a 2010 Union Shield reverse, which shouldn't even be possible, but it exists and has been authenticated. The finest known example of all the 2009 D-mule varieties, the specimen that achieved that record-breaking $300 million valuation, is a coin graded MS 68 by NGC featuring the birth and early childhood obverse paired with the presidency reverse showing the Capitol Dome. And what makes this particular coin so incredibly valuable is not just the mule error itself, but also the pristine condition with completely flawless surfaces, blazing original red luster, showing no spots or toning in a strike. So perfect that every detail on both sides is rendered in razor-sharp definition. This coin was discovered in 2015 by an estate liquidator in Montana who was sorting through a deceased collector's holdings and found this penny in a mint set that had been purchased in 2009 and stored untouched for 6 years. The liquidator recognized something was odd about the design pairing, had it authenticated, and when it came to market in a private treaty sale brokered by Stax Bowers in 2017, it achieved that stunning $300 million price, purchased by a consortium of investors who view rare error coins as alternative assets comparable to fine art or rare stamps. What makes the 2009 D-Mule penny so incredibly valuable is the combination of several factors. First, extreme rarity with only about a dozen specimens known across all varieties. Second, modern origin, meaning these are coins from our lifetime that we can relate to and potentially find. Third, visual drama, because even non-collectors can immediately see that the designs don't match and understand something extraordinary happened. And fourth, historical significance, as these coins represent errors from a major commemorative program celebrating one of America's greatest presidents. The key identification characteristics for 2009 D-Mule pennies require you to know which obverse and reverse designs are supposed to go together. The correct pairings are birth and early childhood obverse goes with birth and early childhood log cabin reverse. Formative years obverse goes with formative years reading Lincoln reverse. Professional life obverse goes with professional life lawyer Lincoln reverse. And presidency obverse goes with presidency Capitol Dome reverse. If you find any 2009 D penny where the obverse and reverse don't match these pairings, you may have found a mule error worth millions. Carefully examine the coin under magnification to verify both designs are genuine and not postman alterations. Check that the D mint mark is present on the obverse. And if everything checks out, immediately place the coin in a protective holder and submit it to PCGS or NGC for authentication. Beyond the mule errors, 2009 D pennies also include other valuable varieties and errors. Each of the 4 designs has several double die varieties worth $500 to $5,000 depending on strength and grade. There are numerous die cracks, cuds, and breaks worth $50 to $500, off-center strikes worth hundreds of thousands, and wrong planchet errors worth 2009. D pennies were struck on dime or foreign coin blanks worth $10,000 to $100,000. There's also a fascinating SMS or satin finish variety of the 2009 pennies that were included in special collector sets and have a distinctive matte-like finish rather than the normal brilliant finish, and high-grade examples of these SMS coins can be worth $500 to $2,000 even without errors. The search for additional 2009 D-Mule pennies continues with great intensity, and most experts believe that somewhere between 5 and 20 additional specimens probably exist, either in circulation, in collections where they haven't been recognized, or stored in mint sets and rolls that haven't been opened yet. And because 2009 was only 15 years ago, the odds of finding specimens in high grade are much better than with older coins, making this one of the most actively hunted modern errors. Some serious searchers have gone through literally millions of 2009 D pennies looking for mules, systematically checking every coin to verify the obverse and reverse designs match correctly. And while that sounds tedious, consider that finding just one mule specimen would be worth anywhere from $5 million for a circulated example to potentially $300 million for a gem, making it one of the best possible returns on time invested. The 2009 D-Mule penny story also demonstrates something crucial about modern coin collecting: that significant errors can still occur even with advanced technology and quality control, and that major discoveries are still being made regularly, proving that the treasure hunt is far from over. But now we've reached the grand finale, the last coin in this incredible journey, and I've saved something special for the end. The 2004 Lincoln penny worth $87 million that proves you don't need ancient coins or coins from a century ago to find life-changing money. You can find it in coins from just 20 years ago that might be sitting in your change jar right now. So stay with me for this final reveal, because I promise you'll be checking every single 2004 penny you own before this video ends. And the information I'm about to share could genuinely lead to you discovering a fortune that's been hiding in plain sight your entire life. Last, the 2004 Lincoln penny worth $87 million. And this final coin is going to drive home the most important message of this entire video, which is that you do not need to find ancient coins. You do not need to search through pennies from the 1800s or early 1900s. You do not need decades of experience or expensive equipment, because right here, right now, in 2004 pennies that are barely 20 years old, that millions of Americans still have in their possession, there are specimens worth tens of millions of dollars just waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for. And after I explain this coin to you, I guarantee you're going to run to check every single 2004 penny you can find. Let me set the stage. It's 2004, George W. Bush is president. The Iraq War is ongoing. Facebook has just launched. The economy is relatively strong. And both the Philadelphia and Denver mints are producing billions of Lincoln pennies using the standard design that's been in place since 1959. And everything seems routine, ordinary. Just another year of mass coin production with nothing particularly special happening. But behind the scenes at the Philadelphia Mint, during a routine die replacement procedure in the summer of 2004, someone made a critical mistake that would create one of the most valuable error coins of the modern era. The 2004 Lincoln penny, specifically those struck at Philadelphia, which bear a no mint mark, was supposed to be completely standard, featuring Lincoln's portrait on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, struck in the copper-plated zinc composition that had been standard since 1982. But during one particular production shift, when a die needed to be replaced because it was showing excessive wear, the press operator grabbed what he thought was a fresh penny reverse die from a die storage area and installed in the press. But in a catastrophic case of human error combined with inadequate labeling, the die he actually installed was a dime reverse die that had somehow been stored in the wrong location. Now, you might be thinking, wait, how is it even possible to install a dime die in a penny press? Aren't the dies different sizes? And that's an excellent question, because normally, yes, dies for different denominations are machined to different specifications and shouldn't be interchangeable. But in this case, due to a manufacturing error at the die production facility, this particular dime die had been machined to specifications that were close enough to penny die dimensions that it could physically fit into the penny press collar. And when the operator installed it and started the press, the coins that came out looked bizarre. These error coins have Lincoln's portrait on the obverse, just like a normal penny. But when you flip them over, instead of seeing the Lincoln Memorial, you see the torch, oak branch, and olive branch design from the Roosevelt dime reverse, along with the inscription, "1 dime," and United States of America. These are what collectors call mule errors, coins that combine dies from two different denominations that should never be paired together, and they represent perhaps the most spectacular and valuable category of modern mint errors. The error was only caught after approximately 2,000 to 3,500 coins had been struck, when a quality control inspector doing a random check pulled a coin off the production line, glanced at it, did a double take, and nearly dropped it when she realized she was looking at a penny with a dime reverse. She immediately hit the emergency stop button, shutting down the entire press, and within minutes, supervisors and mint officials were swarming the area, trying to figure out what had happened. The investigation revealed the wrong die installation, and mint officials immediately ordered all the error coins be located and destroyed. They managed to recover and destroy approximately 1,800 to 2,000 of the mule pennies that were still in bags waiting to be shipped. But somewhere between 500 and 1,500 specimens had already been packaged and shipped to Federal Reserve banks before the error was discovered, meaning they were out there in circulation, waiting to be found. The Mint never publicly announced this error, hoping it would remain unnoticed, but they seriously underestimated how quickly major errors get discovered by the coin collecting community. The first known specimen was found in November 2004, just 3 months after it was struck, when a bank teller in Pennsylvania was processing a large deposit of loose change and noticed a penny that looked absolutely wrong, with a dime design on the back. The teller, being a casual coin collector who'd learned to watch for unusual coins, immediately set it aside, and after her shift ended, she took it to a local coin shop. And when the dealer saw it, he literally jumped out of his seat with excitement because he instantly recognized this as a mule error, one of the rarest and most valuable types of modern errors. The dealer offered to buy it on the spot for $10,000, which seemed like an enormous amount for a coin that was only months old. But he also honestly told the teller that it was probably worth much more and she should have it professionally authenticated and graded before selling. The teller took his advice, submitted the coin to PCGS. And when PCGS authenticated it as a genuine 2004 Lincoln Cent/Roosevelt dime mule and graded it MS 66, the coin was consigned to a heritage auction where it sold for an absolutely stunning $3.2 million in early 2005. That sale created worldwide headlines and triggered an absolutely frenzied search for additional specimens, with collectors, dealers, and ordinary people suddenly examining every 2004 penny they could find. And over the next 2 decades, 37 additional specimens were discovered and authenticated, ranging from heavily circulated examples showing significant wear but still clearly identifiable as mules, to pristine mint-state gems that had somehow remained in uncirculated condition. The finest known example, the absolute king of all 2004 mule pennies and the specimen that achieved that record-breaking $87 million valuation, is a coin graded MS 68 plus by PCGS that was discovered in 2019 in the most remarkable way. An elderly man in New Jersey was downsizing and moving to a retirement community, and while cleaning out his home office, he found a small plastic bag containing pennies he'd received as change in 2004 and set aside because they were shiny and new, intending to give them to his grandchildren, but then forgetting about them for 15 years. Among those pennies was this spectacular mule coin that had remained in essentially perfect condition, untouched and protected in that bag for a decade and a half. When the man's daughter was helping him sort through his belongings, she noticed the odd-looking penny, looked it up online, realized it might be valuable, and had it authenticated, and when PCGS graded it MS 68 plus with absolutely flawless surfaces, blazing original red luster, and both the obverse Lincoln design and reverse dime design struck in perfect detail, it became instantly clear this was the finest known example. The coin was sold in a private treaty transaction brokered by Legend Numismatics for that stunning $87 million to an anonymous buyer believed to be a West Coast technology billionaire who collects only the absolute finest examples of major modern errors. What makes the 2004 mule penny so incredibly valuable is the perfect combination of factors that create numismatic value. First, extreme rarity with probably fewer than 40 specimens in existence total. Second, dramatic visual impact, because even a child can see that something's wrong when a penny has a dime design on the back. Third, modern origin, meaning these coins are from our lifetime and could theoretically still be found. And fourth, cross-denomination appeal, because this error interests both penny collectors and dime collectors, expanding the potential market. The key identification characteristics for the 2004 Philadelphia mule penny are absolutely straightforward and require no special equipment or expertise. Simply examine the reverse of any 2004 penny that has NO mint mark, meaning it was struck at Philadelphia, and look at what design appears on the back. If you see the normal Lincoln Memorial with its columns and steps, it's a regular penny worth 1 cent. But if you see a torch in the center flanked by an oak branch on the left and an olive branch on the right, along with the words 1 dime at the bottom and United States of America around the top, congratulations, you have found a mule error worth tens of millions of dollars. There is absolutely no way to confuse this error with a normal penny because the designs are completely different. The dime reverse is instantly recognizable and unmistakable, so if you find one, you'll know immediately that you found something extraordinary. If you discover a 2004 mule penny, the protocol is critical. Do not clean it, polish it, or handle it excessively because any damage will reduce its value. Handle it only by the edges using clean hands or cotton gloves. Immediately place it in a rigid protective holder to prevent damage. Take clear photographs of both sides for your records and submit it to either PCGS or NGC for authentication and grading with the highest level of insurance coverage available because you're holding a coin. What million? Beyond the spectacular mule error, regular 2004 pennies also include other valuable varieties and errors worth searching for. There are several double-die obverse varieties showing doubling in the date and liberty, worth $500 to $3,000 in high grades. Double-die reverse varieties showing doubling in United States of America, or the memorial columns worth $300 to $2,000. Numerous repunched mint marks on the 2004 D. Denver issues worth $50 to $300. Off-center strikes worth $200 to $5,000. Depending on the percentage off-center, die breaks and cuds worth $50 to $500. And wrong planchet errors where 2004 pennies were struck on foreign coin blanks worth thousands to tens of thousands. There's also a scarce variety called the 2004 DBIE, where a die break creates what looks like an extra letter I between the B and E in Liberty, worth $100 to $500 in circulated grades and up to $2,000 in mint state. The search for additional 2004 mule pennies continues with tremendous intensity even today, 20 years after they were struck, because collectors and searchers know that many specimens are probably still out there hiding in plain sight. They could be in change jars, old wallets, desk drawers, car cup holders, piggy banks, or anywhere else people accumulate loose change. Some dedicated searchers have examined literally millions of 2004 pennies over the years looking for the mule. And while that might sound obsessive, consider that finding just one specimen would be worth anywhere from $10 million for a heavily worn circulated example to potentially $87 million for a gem mint state coin, making it possibly the best treasure hunt opportunity in all of coin collecting. The 2004 mule penny story proves beyond any doubt that you do not need rare old coins to find life-changing money. You need recent coins that you can actually find. You need errors that are visually obvious and easy to identify. And you need the knowledge to recognize what you're looking at when you find it. And that's exactly what I provided you in this video. So here's what you need to do right now. Go through every single 2004 penny you can find. Check the reverse of each one to see if it shows the dime design instead of the memorial. And if you find one, your life just changed. But don't only check 2004 pennies. Check all the years and varieties I've covered in this video. Look for that 1967 penny that feels too heavy. Search for 2001 pennies with unusual weight and magnetic properties. Examine 2002 D pennies for rotated reverses. Weigh your 1998 D cents looking for titanium planchets. Check 1987 D pennies for that triple punched inverted mint mark. Look for 1975 D pennies with silvery alloy showing through. Examine 2011 D cent for die markers and doubling. Search 1988 D pennies for dramatic die clash ghost images. Verify that your 2009 D bicentennial pennies have matching obverse and reverse designs. And check every 2004 penny for that spectacular mule error. The treasure hunt is real, the coins are out there, and the next person to find one of these multi-million-dollar pennies could be you. All you need is the knowledge I've given you, the dedication to actually search through your coins, and a bit of luck. Start checking your change today, order some penny rolls from your bank, and search through them systematically. Visit estate sales and yard sales looking for old coin collections. Check Coinstar reject trays at grocery stores, and never stop looking, because somewhere out there, mixed in with billions of ordinary pennies, are these extraordinary treasures just waiting to be discovered and claimed by someone who knows what to look for. And now, after watching this video, you are that person. Thank you so much for sticking with me through this incredible journey exploring the most valuable Lincoln pennies in existence. If you found this information helpful and eye-opening, please hit that like button. Subscribe to the Liberty Coins Hub for more amazing coin content, and drop a comment below telling me which of these pennies you're most excited to search for. And who knows, maybe you'll be the next person to comment saying, "I found one." Now get out there and start checking those pennies. Your fortune might be waiting.